Hey guys, this is Redjumpman. I'm one of the cog creators for Redbot, and I'm going to show you guys how you can create your own stuff for Redbot too. Now, I may use the word plugin throughout this video, and that's just me. I just think plugin sounds better than cog. So, it's the same thing. The first thing you guys are going to need to do is you're going to need to get a text editor. Now you can use any kind of text editor that you want. There's a lot of really cool ones out there. You can use Sublime Text. You can use Notepad++. You can use IntelliJ. There's a bunch of different stuff you can use. I'm going to be using Atom for this video. You can download Atom for free. I'll put the link in the description. It's open source. It's really great, guys. But use whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, first thing we need to do is we actually need to create our plugin file. So I have a project folder here. It's got a bunch of different stuff that I've created, and so we're going to just create the file in there. We're going to hit new file, and we're going to call the file mimic.py. Really important, guys, make sure that you have that Python extension at the end, because this will be a Python file. And we're ready to go. We can actually start writing our code now. So, to kind of preface this video a little bit before we get started, what we do when we're writing a plugin is we're not necessarily writing a lot of Python from the ground up. Okay, and what I mean by that is that we borrow stuff more than we actually write new things. Now, this obviously is a little bit different when you start getting into some more complicated plugins, but this is going to help. This is going to make a lot of sense, guys, because you can't Google search a lot of the stuff that we're writing because we're actually just using somebody else's work. So, I'll give you an example of that with what we're writing. When we type in from discord.ext import commands, we're borrowing from the Discord Pi. Remember when you did that pip3 install? Whenever you decided that you wanted to use Red? This is where it comes from. We're borrowing something from there called commands. If you look in your app data folder and into Python and look at your libraries, you're going to see something about Discord Pi. You're going to see inside that folder another folder called ext. And inside there, there's going to be a ton of Python files. And inside one of them is going to have information about commands. And that's where we're borrowing it from. You can trace all this stuff back. It doesn't just get pulled out of, thin air. So if you want to try to figure stuff out, then trace back your imports. The other thing I want to discuss about imports before we move on is that there are a lot of people who copy and paste from different plugins, different cogs, and they have this huge import list, and a lot of it they're not using. Okay, that's a sign of somebody who really doesn't know what they're doing. If you import something, you should be using it, right? Or why else borrow it? Okay? Good way to know if you're borrowing it, if you're not, running your stuff through some type of linter or something like that, is when I import commands, something in this code is going to have the word commands in it. And you're going to see that later. So since we're done with that, we're going to move down to line 4, and we're going to actually start creating our class, okay? Your class is going to hold all the stuff for your plugin, and everything that you write is going to go underneath it. Your class name needs to be capitalized. It should be in camel case, meaning that the first letter of every word should be capitalized. So if I wanted this to be called mimic words, then I would type in mimic words like that. The W would need to be capitalized. We're not going to call it mimic words, we're just going to keep it as mimic. Okay? And then below that, we're going to create our docstring. Docstring is just a way of explaining what the class does, like what's its purpose. And we're going to say that it repeats text. So anything that we write underneath this class should be related toward repeating text, because that's what we're saying that it does. And then we're going to go down to line 7, and we're going to start making our constructor. Now, our constructor should be written as such, and I'll get to explaining what that does. We're going to type in define underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then parentheses, self comma bot, colon, underneath that, self.bot equals bot. And that's it for our constructor, guys. So, what's a constructor? Well, the constructor, this underscore init, is called whenever our instance is created. And we want every instance of our class to have these attributes. And self is just a standard word that's used as the first argument of a method function. And because in this case, the first argument is the object instance. Okay? So, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that throughout our code, we're going to be using something called self.bot. Okay, so instead of having to redefine that, we'll just put it up here in the constructor. It gets loaded as soon as the class gets loaded. Okay, and you could put a list in here. You could put self.colors and then create your own little list here. And you can say blue, yellow, green. And throughout your code, you don't have to recreate this list. It's already up here. You don't have to put it anywhere else. It gets loaded into this constructor. And that's it. But we're not going to use a list. Okay? You can put a lot of different stuff here. You can put, whenever you load your JSON data as a dictionary, you can put that in there. You can put dictionaries in there. A lot of cool stuff. This is all we're going to put in there, though, for this. If you want to learn more about constructors, that's something that you can actually Google. It's a thing in Python, and there's some really cool resources out there to explain what that is. Just know that what we put underneath init is stuff that we can reuse throughout our commands within this class. And then we're going to actually start making our commands. So I'm going to write 2 lines, and I'm going to back up and explain what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to put @commands.command no underscore PM equals true. Underneath that, we're going to type in async define copycat parentheses self comma asterisk symbol and text colon. Alright, so let's talk about what we have here. Okay, we got this commands.command. Well, that looks familiar, right? Remember how we're borrowing from Discord Pi? We're borrowing commands. Boom, right there it is. Okay, now it's got this @ symbol at the beginning, so that's a little strange, right? Well, what that means is that this is a decorated function, and a decorated function basically is like a wrapper, and that just lets us execute code before and after the function that it decorates without having to actually modify the function itself. Whoa. Okay, well, if this line is our command, right, and this has to head every single command, you can kind of think of it as like a sandwich, right? Commands.command is basically the 2 pieces of bread for your sandwich. And you can think of like it puts a slice of bread at the very bottom or at the top, however you want to look at it. And then in between, everything we put here is going to be, you know, your meat. It's going to be your lettuce, your tomato, your whatever stuff that you put on a sandwich to make it delicious for you. All of that stuff goes in there. And at the end, it puts another bun or a piece of bread to keep it all together, to actually make it a real sandwich. So that's one way to look at it. You can look up decorated functions in Python, and there's some really cool explanations for what it is. But I'm not going to go super in depth with it because you don't really need that to really get yourself started. But just keep that in mind as we go along. For commands, there's a bunch of different keyword arguments. You can look inside that Discord Pi folder, and it's going to tell you a bunch of different keywords that you can pass in here. But the one we're going to use is no PM equals true, and all that means is that we cannot issue this command within a private message between the bot. Okay, we have to actually put it into a text channel. Now this line, async define, if you're coming from other languages, this may look a little strange, but all this is an asynchronous function. We're creating sort of like this coroutine. Syntactically, this is going to be a coroutine, okay? And then what that means is that we can run stuff concurrently. That's all that means. And copycat is what the name of this is going to be. So in the grand scheme of things, your command is going to be called copycat. This is where you put that name. Now, there are other ways that you can name your command. I'm not going to go into all those different ways during this video, but just know that for this particular instance, this is going to be the name of your command. Also, we're pulling down self from our constructor up here, init, right? Because we're going to be reusing this in our code down here. The other thing that we put in here for our arguments, right, is we put this asterisk symbol and we put text. Now, all the asterisk symbol means is that we're going to be taking on a variable length of arguments, meaning we don't know how many arguments are going to be input by the user. So we put this asterisk symbol to kind of absorb all of those arguments into something that we call text. Now, it doesn't have to be text, guys. It can be whatever you want. You created this particular function. This is where you actually start writing your own stuff, okay? So you could make this frog or blue or whatever you want to name it, okay? But it makes most sense for you to name it text. You want to have good names for your arguments, okay? So that makes sense to everybody else. So whenever somebody uses your command, they're actually basically using this function and putting in arguments to perform whatever comes after it. So that's what's actually happening. So we're going to go down and we're going to create a doc string. And it's just going to explain what the command does. We're going to say that it copies your words. And that's pretty simple, right? It lets people know what this does. And then below that, we're going to type in await self.bot.say text. Now, because this is a coroutine, guys, we got to use this await thing. What that basically does is that it suspends execution of all of your code within this command until this is finished. Once this is finished, then it will continue on and do other stuff. Coroutines have to be yielded or awaited. It used to be yield from before 3.5, and now it's await. Okay, so that's how that's written. And self.bot, remember we pulled that down from our constructor. We're going to add something on the end of it called say. There's some different stuff that you can add on here. You can use whisper, send message, send file, send typing. There's a lot of different stuff that you can add here. But because we just want it to basically print into Discord what we have, we're just going to say. And then we're going to pass this argument that was defined here. Now, because they put in something, let's say hello world, okay, hello space world, those are technically two arguments, right? But because we take variable length, it'll count those spaces and it will put it all into text here. It will absorb it into something that we called text, and then we're going to output it here. So we're just going to push it here. That's all we're doing, guys. We're just moving this to here, and that's it. And you're done. That's all you have to do for this command. It's completely done. There's nothing else that you have to do except for create your setup so that it can load the plugin. So let's go ahead and do that. Define setup bot colon. Now, this is going to tell Red, hey, these are all the things that need to be done before you actually load this plugin. So you can put different checks in here. You can put different requirements. You can give people some runtime errors if they don't have, certain third-party libraries installed. All that stuff goes under your setup. But we don't really have any other requirements, so let's just go ahead and finish this off. We're going to type in n equals mimic parentheses bot, and then we're going to type in bot.add underscore cog parentheses n. And that's going to be finished. Okay. Actually, let's put another line here. And the reason why we wrote this out this way, because you're probably thinking, well, why didn't we just put this inside here? Why do we have to create it as n? Well, it just looks a lot cleaner because you don't have to have two sets of parentheses. And then the other thing is that if you decided to come back to this and you wanted to create like, oh, well, now this uses a third-party library, you don't have to rewrite this, put this in here. You can just use it as n, okay? It just makes it look a lot neater, guys, that's all. And you're done, that's all. If you have questions or comments and stuff, just feel free to let me know below. And I will put this code in the comment section so that you can download it yourself. But try to follow along for the first time and see if you can write it and get it to work. Alright guys,